The Middle East simmers with tension. A potential conflict with Iran casts a long shadow. This is not Iraq. This is not Afghanistan. A war with Iran would be unlike anything the United States has ever experienced. It could end America's reign as a global superpower. The stakes have never been higher. Iran has spent decades preparing for this moment. They have studied America's tactics. They understand its weaknesses. Iran is ready to exploit any misstep. The consequences of conflict would be devastating. Imagine a world with skyrocketing oil prices. Picture a global economy in free fall. This is the nightmare scenario that awaits if war erupts. The time for restraint is now. The world cannot afford another catastrophic conflict in the Middle East. Iran's military strategy is not about conventional warfare. They won't meet the US on a traditional battlefield. Instead, Iran has developed an arsenal of asymmetric warfare. This means using unconventional tactics to level the playing field. First, Iran possesses a massive stockpile of missiles. Thousands of rockets stand ready to strike US bases across the region. These missiles can reach Israel, Saudi Arabia, and even parts of Europe. The damage would be catastrophic. Second, Iran commands a network of proxy armies. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza are loyal to Tehran. They would unleash terror attacks and wage guerrilla warfare, stretching the US military thin. Finally, Iran can disrupt global oil supplies. The Strait of Hormuz is a vital waterway for oil tankers. Iran could easily mine the strait or attack passing ships. The result? Soaring oil prices and economic chaos worldwide. The economic fallout of a war with Iran would be swift and brutal. The global economy is already on shaky ground. A major conflict in the Middle East would send shockwaves through every market. The price of oil would skyrocket. Iran's threats to disrupt oil shipments are not empty. Even the fear of disruption would send prices soaring past $200 a barrel. Consumers would feel the pain at the pump, businesses would struggle to cope, and inflation would soar. The US dollar could collapse. The dollar's dominance depends on global trust and stability. A costly war would erode that trust. Countries might abandon the dollar, further weakening the US economy. The cost of war itself would be astronomical. The US has already spent trillions on wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. A war with Iran would dwarf those costs. The bill could reach tens of trillions of dollars, crippling the US economy for generations. A war with Iran wouldn't be fought in isolation. It would ignite the entire region, pulling in US allies and shattering partnerships built over decades. Iraq, already teetering on the brink, could descend into chaos. Iran exerts significant influence in Iraqi politics. A pro-Iranian government could easily expel US troops, leaving Iraq vulnerable to Iranian domination. Saudi Arabia, a key US ally, would face a nightmare scenario. Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have already launched drone and missile attacks on Saudi oil facilities. A full-blown war would escalate these attacks, threatening the kingdom's economic lifeline. Israel, facing the brunt of Iran's fury, would be forced to defend itself. Hezbollah, armed with thousands of rockets supplied by Iran, could unleash a devastating barrage on Israeli cities. The conflict would spread, destabilizing the entire region. Section 5. The Petrodollar's Demise. A new world order emerges. The geopolitical consequences of a war with Iran would reshape the world order. The United States, weakened and isolated, would watch as its global influence waned. China, sensing an opportunity, would seize the moment. They have been steadily building ties with Iran, offering economic partnerships and ignoring US sanctions. A war would push Iran further into China's arms, cementing China's role as a dominant power in the region. The petrodollar system, the foundation of US economic dominance, could crumble. For decades, oil has been traded primarily in US dollars. A war with Iran could disrupt this system, leading to the emergence of alternative currencies and diminishing the dollar's global standing. The world would become a more dangerous and unpredictable place. The rules-based international order, already under strain, would face its greatest challenge yet. The United States, once seen as a guarantor of stability, would be viewed as a reckless and unreliable actor. Section 6. Echoes of Empires Past, the Fall of Rome and Great Britain. History is replete with cautionary tales of empires that overreached and collapsed. The Roman Empire, once a dominant force, crumbled under the weight of its own vastness and military ambitions. Great Britain, after centuries of global dominance, was exhausted and financially drained by 2 world wars, leading to the decline of its empire. The United States, while facing a different set of challenges, risks repeating these historical blunders. Decades of costly military interventions in the Middle East have drained America's resources, strained its alliances, and diminished its standing in the world. A war with Iran would be the ultimate act of overreach, accelerating America's decline and ushering in a new era of global instability. Section 7. The Price of Hubris. America's dangerous gamble in the Middle East. The United States has often acted with a sense of exceptionalism in the Middle East. It has pursued regime change, intervened militarily, and imposed its will on the region. This approach, driven by hubris and a belief in American exceptionalism, has backfired time and again. The invasion of Iraq, based on flawed intelligence and unrealistic expectations, destabilized the region and created a power vacuum that Iran eagerly filled. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, chaotic and poorly planned, damaged America's credibility and emboldened its adversaries. A war with Iran would be the culmination of these misguided policies. It would represent a colossal failure of judgment and a reckless gamble with America's future. The costs, both human and financial, would be immeasurable. Section 8. A Path to Disaster. The Perils of Miscalculation and Misjudgment. The path to war is often paved with miscalculations and misjudgments. Leaders, blinded by ideology or driven by domestic political pressures, can make decisions that have catastrophic consequences. In the case of Iran, the Trump administration's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal was a major turning point. The deal, while not perfect, was working. It had curtailed Iran's nuclear program and opened a channel for diplomacy. Trump's decision to abandon the deal, driven by a desire to undo the legacy of his predecessor, reignited tensions and brought the two countries closer to the brink of war. The danger of miscalculation remains high. Both sides are engaged in a dangerous game of brinkmanship. A single incident, whether intentional or accidental, could escalate into a full-blown conflict. Section 9. Averting Catastrophe, a Call for Diplomacy and Restraint. The only way to avert the nightmare scenario of a war with Iran is through diplomacy and restraint. The United States must abandon its policy of maximum pressure and engage in meaningful dialogue with Tehran. This will require compromise from both sides. The United States must be willing to lift some sanctions and offer Iran a pathway back into the international community. Iran, in turn, must address concerns about its nuclear program and its support for regional proxies. The alternative is too terrible to contemplate. A war with Iran would be a disaster for all involved. It would plunge the Middle East into further chaos, destabilize the global economy, and accelerate the decline of American power. The time for diplomacy is now. The world cannot afford to wait any longer.